Hello, everyone. Mike and Corey here today. Could we have 3 days in a row of a green market? I'm liking that. Just give me one more day and we hit the weekend. So today, three topics. I'm going to talk about unforeseen tariff things, or maybe you knew they were happening, but the actions happening because of tariffs. Corey's going to talk a little bit about tariffs, more tariffs being mentioned in earnings calls. And then your favorite topic that we hit on every once in a while, though we love to talk about it every day, is what's Bitcoin doing lately and how's that relate to the overall market? So with that, this is a financial education presentation. You must do your own due diligence on anything you hear in this presentation. More disclaimer information can be found on ankerstarwealth.com, and the opinions expressed are mine and Corey's alone. So let me start off with the good news. The markets are up. We're seeing the NASDAQ up over 2% and the S&P up 1.5%. Very good news. This is the third day in a row, 3 days in a row of pretty good moves up, not just like 3 days in a row of 0.2%. Good sized jumps. Are we all the way back to break even on the year? We're not quite there yet, but I definitely like where this is trending. As all of you know, the market hates uncertainty, and all the discussion with tariffs and the how that's going to be implemented and reciprocal, and I wish we were totally out of the woods, but we're not. The market's starting to get some clarity, or at least a delay on when they're going to be implemented. So the market's reacting accordingly. I thought today I'd hit on a couple things that kind of the unforeseen side of tariffs. Anytime you do something, there's unforeseen consequences, and maybe you could predict these, maybe you couldn't. But when the tariffs come out, I thought this was interesting. All of a sudden, there's a rush to buy. So your initial instinct, and certainly what we saw in the stock market, was there was a rush to sell, to get out of stocks. That's why it came down. Stocks sold off very quickly. But the actual rush to buy, like automobiles, appliances, and it does make sense. But if you're really concerned about the economy and you're like, I got to hunker down and save my dollars, you probably don't rush out and buy a new car. But that's not what happened. There was a surge to buy new cars and new appliances. In fact, it was up 9.2% on the month, from only 0.9% in February. So that's huge. So basically, the consumers went out and said, wow, things are going to be more expensive, so I'm going to go buy them while they're on sale now. Kind of like the flip-flop of the stock market. Stocks are on sale, so now maybe it is time to buy them. So anyways, this article came out, talked about cars, automobiles up. I mean, I saw a few signs that said, hey, come buy your car before the tariff gets added to the price. I don't know if that really would do it. Maybe it did. I saw another article where it said that the used and new vehicle inventory was down, which means hence they're being sold. So Corey, when you hear that, does that make you want to run out and get a new car, used car, anything like that?
We got one on Monday.
There you go. Although this was last month's data, but Corey, adding to the April number that'll be coming out in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So did they say anything like buy now and you avoid the tariffs?
Well, you and I looked at that Ford internal memo that got leaked that was encouraging people to buy now. We didn't really talk to him about it. Honestly, this was our decision was independent of any economic decision. But the timing is funny that this report is coming out and we did it at the same time.
Well, I call internal. This is the U.S. purchasing because of tariffs. But I had never thought of this. And when I share this next article, I didn't even know about it. But what are other countries buying from the U.S. because of tariffs? Now, this is from last year. American liquor exports hit record high in 2024, driven by tariffs. Now, the headline is deceptive in a sense because this is last year, and the tariff talk really didn't blow up until this year. So I had to scroll through this a little bit. But and those of you that drink whiskey, there was a 50% tariff on American whiskey, which was suspended in 2022. So, I don't even know. I mean, I'm not a whiskey drinker, so it's kind of like the thought of like, oh, I better rush out and get that good old U.S. whiskey before they add a 50% tariff to it. Um, you know, what does the United States export? Well, I guess we export whiskey. There's one thing. We export Hollywood movies. We don't export a lot, but it is interesting to see kind of the repercussions of tariffs. I don't even know. I live close to Kentucky, so maybe I ought to go down there and say, hey, are bourbon sales to international clients spiking? Because they probably should be. Core, what do you think about that one? Little different?
I wasn't aware, and I'm also not a customer. I'm not the target audience there, so I just wasn't connected to that one.
And I didn't even know there was a 50% tariff in 2022. So who knows? There were tariffs before Trump. Just to kind of show everybody that. So with that, tell us what you're seeing in the earnings on tariffs.
Okay, well, you know what? Before that, I'm going to show you something, and this is going to be so refreshing. No tariffs. Can I show you something with no tariffs? And that is Bitcoin. No tariffs on Bitcoin. Recently, we have seen to about the largest extent that we've ever seen before, prior to now, a decoupling of technology-focused stocks and Bitcoin. Bitcoin in the past has traded as though it was kind of a Mag 8, right? Or it was an extension of those big tech stocks that obviously all Americans own through one vehicle or another. But over this past couple of weeks, Bitcoin had stopped going down, started to rebound, reclaimed support, was aggressively rebounding really before the market did any of that. And Mike pointed out today, Bitcoin not having the best day today, but the market is having a great day. So we've been watching a few things around Bitcoin. It's behaving a little bit more like gold than we've seen in the past. It is benefiting from the weaker dollar. So that's part of that thesis on, the dollar is being devalued. So you need another place to go there. And then also you're looking at it, how is it correlated to those big tech stocks? And it's showing a little less correlation than normal there. So interesting stuff on Bitcoin. And of course, as Mike said, word gets said a lot around here. Okay, about as far away from Bitcoin as you can go. Procter & Gamble earnings. Oh, no, even further. Hold on. I prepared a few things, but we're just going to hit on one here. I loved this quote from the Union Pacific CEO. So railroads, Bitcoin, pretty far apart. He says they had a steady first quarter. What do they mean by that? Their revenue was like exactly flat. And then strong freight volumes, operational gains. Okay. I really liked this quote here from the CEO when kind of being asked about tariffs. He summarizes the current environment really well. He says, at this point, there is a lot of things, tariffs, economy, what the consumer does, what interest rates are, what's going to happen with interest rates, what's going to happen with the tax package or the packages that Congress is looking at doing. So all those things are up in the air. What we look at this point in time, we are very comfortable that we are standing by our guidance that we provided last year. So you do get that reaffirmed guidance. Not all companies are doing that. We saw just today, Chipotle is blaming a weaker consumer, even though they also say they're taking share from other quick serve restaurants. Pepsi's blaming the consumer. Hasbro cited a very large tariff impact to their business, even though they did have a great quarter. But I thought this CEO quote here really summarizes the current environment. There is much more up in the air beyond just tariffs. And it's really tough for these companies to pin all of that down. You know, if the tariffs stay on and taxes do get dropped, then some of these things could kind of negate each other, right? Or even each other out. So as far as the consumer goes. So still some uncertainty, but generally speaking, and you're seeing that in the markets move up today, companies are pretty resilient right now.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to hear some of those different quotes and what I call excuses. Just once, I guess I'd like to hear a CEO come out and say, hey, it's not the consumer's fault at all. You know, our food wasn't as fresh as we'd like it. It wasn't served fast enough. Our marketing didn't work out as well. You know, it's kind of like that, you know, blame the customer. I don't know. I just would like to see, you know, somebody come out and say that. And then, of course, I like how Union Pacific used steady. Steady, such a good, solid word. And they made steady instead of growth sound like a good thing. Like, I'd rather than growing really fast and growing our stock price, let's just keep it steady like a CD rate, you know. So
Sure.
I kind of it'd be kind of interesting to look at. And I don't know the CEO, and nor does he or she know me. But you know, did they major in English? You know, is that part of being CEO? Is you got to be able to kind of spin it the right way with the right words? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of word spinning that goes on in the world these days, for sure.
I know.
Not just CEOs, mind you, then the news and many others.
So I guess, you know, after a year, if, you know, the markets didn't do well, we could, you know, come back and say, yeah, we kept your portfolio steady. And people will be like, wait, it didn't go up. I know, but it was steady. The ship was steady. So anyways, I'll remember that one. But with that, 3 days in a row in the green. Believe me, the day we cross into 0%, the market has recovered at least back to the beginning of 2025. If you remember, in 2025, it actually peaked and went higher through January. But, you know, at least we're seeing some, you know, less panic, I'll say. The fear index is down below 30 and things like that. So with that, let's see. Let's hope today stays in the green and bring us into Friday. And if we get into Friday Green Day, I think we'll be celebrating all weekend long. So thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.